right. Well, thank you for being here. I am the president of our beloved DFW Veterans Chamber. I am Christy Campbell. I am by trade a website developer, social media marketing, and graphic designer. So I would appreciate all referrals. I am also the National Chamber Development Director for our headquarters, and we're getting ready to institute a lot of great changes that are going to benefit all of our members and our chamber leadership as well. So thank you so much for being here. And Irving?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Irving Chung. I'm a franchise consultant with Franchise. So what I do is help people to explore business ownership through franchising. If you're looking for a second or third business, talk to me. I love brainstorming on vertical or diversification of your business and income stream. If you're someone like Eric who has 4 or 5 businesses, then come talk to me. I'm also specialized in working with veterans. So if you're in transition, knowing someone is, I'm working with Jeff's son, giving him lots of options to consider. It's good to know your options before you make a choice. So business ownership is one of them. Come speak to me. I'm also the director of entrepreneurship with the chamber and board member. My job is to bring resources, speakers, information to help you grow and improve your business or even start your business. So I want to introduce 2 people today. Sarah Heath will be one of our panelist speakers on everything HR, in addition to Scott. So we'll be talking about hiring practices, payroll, benefits, all the great things that as a business owner, you need to think about, know about. But today, I'm very proud to introduce Jana Ferguson. Jana Ferguson is a local Dallas employment attorney and general counsel. Although she doesn't look it, she has 20 years of experience. I've worked with her and she is fantastic. Today, as many of you, I'm a business owner. I own an indoor cycling studio as well. I'll be offering some veteran discounts, but I'm always struggling with, how do we open up and how do we navigate the mask policies and how do we navigate vaccinations with employees and all that stuff. And it could be confusing. So Jana will be speaking on that today. So Jana, please.
Hi, good morning. I want to say a sincere thank you to Irving and to the Chamber for inviting me here today. I do want to start by just saying how heartwarming it is. I love that we did the pledge and the national anthem at the beginning, and that is something that I do a lot of speaking, and I have not seen that in a long time. So I really want to thank you for doing that, and I just think that's so important. So thank you. I'm really honored to be here today, and I really want to provide service to you as a group. And really, you've done so much for the country, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for having me, and thank you for all your service. As mentioned, my name is Jana Ferguson, and I have a firm called Ferguson Consultants based here in Dallas. I've been practicing employment for almost 25 years. So I started off with a large law firm downtown called Winstead. Then I worked in-house at PepsiCo and at Frito-Lay and at Mary Kay. I'll do a quick plug. When I was at PepsiCo, one of the things that I was very proud on, we did a lot of veteran recruiting. I know they're still doing that. So I think that's a good opportunity for when you know somebody that is looking for positions. PepsiCo really works hard, and Frito-Lay to hire veterans. So just as FYI on that, I think that's a good service. So I now have my own firm. It's Ferguson Consultants. I really founded Ferguson Consultants because I have a passion for helping small and mid-sized companies to grow. When I was at PepsiCo, we had hundreds and hundreds of attorneys every day that were providing service because it's a huge company. And I would say it bothered me a little bit that, other companies did not have that kind of support in order to grow. So, that's really why I founded my company, and that's really what my passion is. So today the discussion is legal implications of COVID and reopening. I know we have about 20 minutes. So I'm hoping that, through this, we will all see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that we'll have some processes in place to make sure that that light is actually a real light and it's not like an oncoming train. So that's what I want to do here today. So when we talk about it, what I thought I'd do is go through some like high level discussion of processes that you can put in place to help decrease your risk and really manage your process. And then I hope that at the end we have a few minutes for me to answer any kind of questions that you have, anything that you're going through in your businesses. I'm here to help with that. I do want to say that in business, there's always, no matter what decision you have, and no matter, how much effort you put into doing the right thing, there's always risk. So, doing these things is not something that is going to, take away all risk, but it just helps you to manage that risk. And I know I heard several of the attendees here that have to, insurance, and I heard the word risk in regards to lots of different things, whether it was cruise industry or insurance, real estate. I mean, everywhere there's risk. So what I try to do is partner to manage that risk. Let's see. I do want to note that COVID protocols are impacted by federal, state, and local laws, all of which are changing so rapidly. So literally by the time we finish this discussion, there could be a new law or a change in a regulation. So I highly recommend, if you're going to make an important decision that has to do with COVID and the COVID protocols, talk to somebody that can tell you whether it's still there. So I'll make sure that y'all have my contact information in case I can help you. All right, so let's go through the steps and considerations that you should make in order to return your business back to normal so that you can grow your companies and reduce that risk. All right, so step number one, I highly recommend that you assess your individual business. As a business, think, what do I really need to do to get back to the essential functions and to run my business, as close to possible or better than it was before COVID? Do I want or need all of my employees in the office? If so, how many do I need? What are the skills and tasks that I really need to have accomplished in order to make my business run smoothly? Many businesses, many of my clients are finding that they need a phased in approach, and they're not going to be bringing back the entire workforce at the same time. It's going to be more phased in just as the economy opens back up. So how do you decide who to bring back? These decisions are subject to legal scrutiny. So when deciding who to bring it back, it is safest to use objective criteria. For example, attendance, certifications, things that are not subjective. Examples of subjective criteria might be like somebody that you just like better, somebody who you think communicates better, or you like their style or their attitude, because those things are based on opinion. And you might think one thing, somebody else may think something else. And so if you did end up being challenged on that decision, it is harder to defend something based upon subjective criteria as opposed to, I picked this person because they have, 3 certifications in, something that's related to my business, and the other person did not. So it's things that are more factual based as opposed to opinion based. Once you have decided that, it is so important to document that criteria, and then document how you decided which person fits into that criteria. If you have, a larger company, like mid to larger companies, it's a good idea to do a statistical analysis to make sure that your reasons, even if you had the best intentions in the world, didn't impact negatively any particular group. So for example, if you're like, I only want people that have a certain certification, and everyone that meets that criteria is a 20-year-old white male, and all the females are, all your veterans, which wouldn't be the case here, if they were all negatively impacted, then you could have a statistical problem. So it's a good idea to do a statistical analysis, and it's an even better idea if you do that statistical analysis to make sure that you do it under a claim of privilege, so that if you do have a problem, you're able to privately and confidentially make some adjustments to make sure you don't get into trouble. So once you've decided that you are going to bring workers back, into a actual physical location, step 2 to that is to draft a written notice to those impacted employees. For those who are being brought back to work, the notice should document that you did offer the employee the chance to come back to work. This is very important because in case the employee refuses to come back, especially in this time when there's an increased unemployment benefits, some people may be making more money if they stay at home as opposed to coming back to work, and that negatively would impact your unemployment rating. So if you do offer somebody the chance to come back, generally speaking, they would no longer qualify for unemployment. They would need to come back to work. I guess similarly to that, if they were to bring a legal proceeding and say that you didn't bring them back, you would have proof that you in fact did offer them that opportunity, which would help with your defense and also again help with decreasing any kind of potential damages. If you in that written notice, you should also include the steps that you took to ensure that the workplace is a safe place to return. I give a shout out to Irving on this because I have several times gone to his cycling studio, and he has taken amazing steps to make sure that it is clean, it is socially distanced. He's done everything that he could do to show that his place is not only a safe place for his riders, but also for his employees to come to work. So I think he definitely gets a gold star for his efforts in that. And I'm sure that he is documenting all those efforts as well, so that if somebody did come back and say that he wasn't, he would be able to show the very long list of things he's done to have a safe environment. Examples are, how are you socially distancing? How are you disinfecting? Have you implemented screening procedures like temperature checks to decrease the risk of spreading COVID? Have you adjusted meeting protocols? For example, I know pre-COVID, sometimes we would have, meeting after meeting after meeting, and the question would come up, usually not aloud, but in people's thoughts of, did we really need to spend that hour there? Did we need to have the whole workforce? I think now we can redirect as a business, legal and also business time and being productive. Maybe we didn't need all those people in that meeting. Maybe we would have been better served to have some people doing other things. So it's a good time to not only decrease risk, but to increase your efficiencies. Let's see, for in-person meetings, did you leave room for social distancing? Perhaps depending on your particular business, there might be a need for social dividers. I think that is becoming disfavored now, but it could be if you have I think there are some places, like maybe in a manufacturing facility, where those physical dividers are necessary, not just to make the employees feel better, but also to decrease the risk of you having to disrupt your business. So it's a very highly individualized thought process depending on your particular place of business. So what Irving would do in a cycle business would not necessarily be what you would do if you had your, the insurance company or, another kind of consulting business. But it might be, it just depends. So if an employee feels like you're not doing enough to make them feel safe, they might have a reason not to come back to work and to, continue to get like unemployment, or to come after you and say that they were really constructively discharged, things like that. Litigation and complaints are definitely up in this COVID era. The other part of that too is that OSHA and the National Labor Relations Act also require that you provide a safe place to work. So by documenting what you have done, you're really helping yourself to stay out of trouble. All right. Step 3, establish a plan to screen employees. I get this question all the time. Can I screen my employees when they enter the building? Now, a year and a half ago, the answer to that would have been a hard no. You can't take 2 years ago, year and a half ago, you could not take temperatures. It would be a violation of the Americans with Disability Act. But now in these pandemic times, the EEOC has issued guidance that allow for consistent procedures to lessen the spread of COVID. For example, if you can take temperatures at the door, and if you do so, you need to make sure that you're taking everyone's temperatures. You can't make that subjective decision like, oh, I think that Jim looks like he has a fever, I'm going to take his, but Sarah looks fine, so I'm not going to take hers. That can get you into trouble. So the key there is being consistent. If you require employees with symptoms to go home, then every employee with a symptom has to go home. Again, it's important to be consistent. So that may not be the right way to go with that. The next step, it is very important that you establish protocols that protect the privacy interest of your employees. So if you are screening and somebody has to go home, that you don't get comment on, the reason the person went home. You don't let people know that employees that a particular employee, I should say, has COVID. You can send out notifications that say that, a generic one that does not identify the person that has COVID or the reason that the person, has to go home. I think that in small to mid-sized businesses, it's often easy to figure out who the person is. But as an employer, you would not confirm that. Your response would be, I appreciate your concern. Thank you very much. But we're concerned about your privacy interests as well as your coworkers. So we can't confirm, who has COVID or who has, whatever the private issue is. So in order to make that happen, you also need to be training your employees on how to maintain privacy and confidentiality, and stressing that it is important to your workplace. Step 5, this is a really good time to make sure that your policies and procedures are up to date, because the rules, COVID has been a game changer. And just because we think things are going to be opening back up, it doesn't mean there's not going to be another wave. And it doesn't mean that everything is going to go back to normal the way it was before. And, some of that's good, because there's been some changes that I think are going to be good for business and that are going to be helpful. So it's important to make sure that you have your handbook and your policies up to date. For example, does your employer have a specific work from home policy? Some employers did before and some didn't, but now it's the work from home certainly is going to be more prevalent, and that's going to go forward in the future. It was a nice to have. Now it really is a must have. A work from home policy needs to have an approval process. It needs to have some kind of definition about who can qualify for work from home. Everybody can't. It just depends on what their job is, what their job function is. The receptionist at the front desk probably can't work from home, but perhaps some IT people can. Again, it's an individual determination. Other things, it's really important in that policy to decide and have clear criteria on how the individual tracks time if they're working from home. If they're in the office, it's really easy to clock in and clock out, but when they're working from home, I think those lines get blurred, and that's going to be really important from a Fair Labor Standards Act purpose. Another thing that is very important is, how do we keep company information confidential? Some people are, if they're no longer on a secure server, what kind of information can they have in order to run their business from the house? So that not only would include policies and procedures, but that could also include some additional IT work. And I think that I know there's an IT expert on the line, so I'm sure he's working on that from the IT perspective as well. There's a big business opportunity there. Also, once the employee, when you want them to come back and they don't want to come back, what do you do with that? If you look at it, you can require them to come back under most circumstances, unless they have a legitimate reason not to. And that goes back to that letter or the written documentation that we talked about at the beginning. It's also very important for employers and managers to review their sick leave and attendance policies, generally making them more flexible than they were before. The reality is that many workers will have family obligations that are related to the pandemic, and employers will be expected to help with that. People who have had to miss work because of COVID are definitely very sympathetic, because I think that almost everybody knows somebody, if they were not impacted themselves, they know people who were. So it just underlines the reason to make sure that you're being compassionate and that you're communicating in a way that is going to put your business in a good light, basically. If the company has fewer than 500 employees, then the Family First Coronavirus Response Act has been extended. It was till the end of the year, then it got extended again. Now it's going through September 2021. And if things are continuing the way they are, maybe it won't be extended again, but it very likely could be. And so what that does is employers that have under 500 people are required to provide paid expanded family and medical leave. So that's very different. For one, Family Medical Leave Act for pre-COVID was and continues to be, if it's not related to COVID, unpaid. So this is paid. You can recoup some of that money through some tax benefits, but as a practical matter, that's something that you have to plan for. It disrupts the ability to know who's going to necessarily be at work at any given time. You can mitigate that as well by offering the work from home. And then that goes back to having that work from home policy of who can actually work from home. Because if they can work from home, then it's not a paid non-working position. I mean, you can offer that. You can, I think I'm not being clear on that. So if you offer a work from home for that individual, then they do not get paid leave to not work. Okay, so my practical advice here is to treat your employees the way you would want to treat your favorite relative. There are a few people who've not been impacted by this, and again, the citizens are the people on the jury. So if somebody complains, you want to make sure that it's clear that you were the good guy in this and that you did what you needed to do to be fair to the employee. That doesn't mean the employee gets everything they want, but it just means to treat people with respect. You don't want to have to tell people that you don't care about your employees. That doesn't come across well to a jury. You also need to look at your Americans with Disability Act policies as it applies to COVID. You need to train your decision makers to recognize that that COVID does impact not just people who have COVID, but the COVID can have the long hauler effect. So COVID can cause someone to be disabled, or it can exacerbate existing disabilities like lung issues or diabetes, different things like that. So while the ADA does not allow discrimination against someone who is associated with a disabled person as well. So I have seen this circumstances where employers didn't want to have somebody come into the work because they thought that somebody they were associated with somebody with COVID. That can raise a red flag, because association with somebody with a disability can also trigger a claim. So a question that I receive on a daily basis is, can I require my employees to get a vaccine in Texas? The answer is generally yes. In Texas, employers can require employees to be vaccinated. However, there are two main exceptions. That's disability accommodations and religious accommodations. Let's first talk about the disability exception. So can your employee claim that they cannot be required to take a vaccine as a reasonable accommodation for their disability? The answer is maybe. So we know that some people who suffer from severe allergies, for example, may not be eligible for a vaccine. So in that circumstance, I'm going to talk about this legally first and then practically. So if somebody has a valid reason related to a disability, they may be able to be exempt if you can provide a accommodation. So that requires an interactive process. Like, for example, can you tell the person, okay, you don't have to do that, but we're going to move your office away from other people to decrease the risk of transmission, or you have to wear a mask. I mean, different things like that. But again, it's going to be an individual determination, but you cannot just say across the board, I'm not going to listen to you. You have to listen, and you have to document what efforts you did. And that doesn't mean that you have to require the vaccine. You certainly do not have to do that. But that goes to if you want to. And then, so what if the employee says that they have a religious objection? That's even harder to say no to, because I think that you would have to question somebody's religious standing, and that's almost always a loser. So the EEOC updated guidance does say that that if an employer is on notice that the employee has a sincerely held religious belief, practices, or observations to prevent the employee from receiving the vaccine, the employer must provide a reasonable accommodation unless it would impose an undue hardship. So in the context of religion, undue hardship means more than a de minimis cost or burden to the employer. So as I start to advise you to assume that employees' request for religious accommodation is sincere. So we're just as on the vaccine, whether to vaccinate or not, it is politically charged. As a business, there's an interest in perhaps having your employees be vaccinated so that it can minimize business disruption. But I would encourage you to consider, if you want to have people have a vaccine, instead of making it mandatory, I would advise you to consider putting a carrot instead of a stick to get people to do that, such as rewards, like you get 2 days extra vacation behind the vaccine to make sure that you're feeling okay. I mean, something that speaks to your employees as opposed to a stick, because it also creates employee relation problems. So I'm not here to be pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, but those are just some considerations that I think that every employer should consider before they make that decision.
Jana, if you don't mind hanging out for a few minutes, we can wrap things up, and you can ask, if you're okay with that, we can let members ask questions afterwards if they want to hang out. But like we say, we want to be conscious of their time, and we promised them an 8:30 end.
Absolutely.
But you have so much information that you've been sharing with us, and we really appreciate it. It's been a lot to absorb, right?
Well,
so if anybody
a lot
wants
of
to
information.
hang out,
If
anybody wants to hang out with us for a little bit, but we'll say we're officially going to come to an end.